Good evening, brothers and sisters. How are you doing today? I'm hoping you're doing great. I'm hoping that you enjoyed your day. This is halfway through the week. This is going to be great. My question for you today is, imagine you were a general in the military, and while you were preparing to defend your country from an invading army, and all of a sudden you have dissenters rise up and want to change the government altogether. What would your action be? What would you do to prevent such a catastrophe from happening? We'll answer this question and more in today's episode. Welcome to my channel. My name is Kevin and I am an elder in Israel. And today we are delving into Alma chapter 51. Now, as you notice in the past few chapters, this has been all about war and political uprisings and all sorts of stuff. There's been very few doctrinal, spiritual things come up. But if we are wise, if we are prayerful, everything we read in the Book of Mormon can be applied to our spiritual lives. It's inevitable. And it's the best way to continue to grow in spiritually is by finding those things through prayerfully reading the Book of Mormon. Now, one thing I will say is I generally don't encourage people to read the Book of Mormon per se, but I encourage people to study the Book of Mormon. And when I mean study, I mean take your time reading it. If you see words that you don't understand, look them up. There's a great dictionary online that it's called Webster's Dictionary 1828. Now, this is a dictionary that would help us in understanding some of the words that were popular or that were used back in Joseph Smith's day. Find resources to help you better understand the scriptures. The more we understand them, the more we'll receive God's guiding light. So, with that, let's get started. Now, if you guys remember, in the last chapter, Moroni was fortifying the cities. He was preparing them for war. And the Nephite people actually were starting to fall in. They were talking how when people don't obey the commandments of God, they fall into wars and destruction. But yet when they are obeying the laws and commandments of God, they prosper. And this is true of our nation today. I'll let you be your own judge of it on how we're doing. We also learn that Morianton and some dissenters were destroyed. And also we learned that Nephi, the second chief judge over all the people of Nephi and the chief governor, had passed away. And his son, Pahoran, had taken over. And so with that, let's turn to Alma chapter 51. All right. So starting off,
Now that Moroni and his dissenters were crushed, there's peace in the land. And it states here, he says, there have been peace between the people of Lehi, who were invaded by the people of Moroni. They made peace, and that's great. When a nation has so much turmoil inside, peace like that is hard to do. Now, could you imagine here in our modern times, let's say California decides that it needs more room, that its borders, it needs more land, and so the governor says, you know what? Let's look at all the land roundabout. Which one is more favorable for us to take? So the governor decides, you know what? Nevada has some great mountain ranges that share with us, and they have a good economy. I don't know if that's true or not, but I'm just saying that. And he decides, you know what? Let's go. So he takes the state's army, and they invade. And they invade not just a small portion. Say they go all the way, say within 100 miles of the border, maybe even 200. That's what it would be like. It'd be one state invading another. Now we know that's not possible today because of how civilized we are and how the Constitution and the laws of the land operate. But, you know. All right, so unfortunately, peace in the Nephite army doesn't get to last long. So in the first year of Pahoran's reign as chief judge and governor, there came among a bunch of people who wanted to change particular points of the law. And they did it as the law points out. They needed to have a petition signed by so many people. And then, once that petition has been brought forward, it's Pahoran's job to put it out to the Nephite people. Every single one in the land gets to come and vote. Well, it turned out that the people didn't like the petition and what it would do. Now, they didn't like this at all. And make sure that I'm still signed in because I have some notes coming up and I want to be able to use them. So, and those people did not like that idea that by popularity vote, because it's a democratic society, and in a democratic society, it's the majority who, if the majority votes no, it's gonna be no. Well, the minority didn't like this one bit, and so they were angry with him. And we read in verse 4, it says, therefore, those who were desirous that the law should be altered were angry with him, meaning Pahoran, and desired that he should no longer be chief over the land. Therefore, there arose a warm dispute concerning the matter, but not into bloodshed. Now, when you hear the word warm in a a warm dispute, that just means high tempers were going, they were angry, and they were probably protests. They weren't really violent. They would just go around the land telling people, hey, this chief Pahoran, he didn't change our laws. We need to get him out of here. He's no good for the people. That's what a warm dispute is. Now, so those who wanted, who had done this petition, who didn't want Pahoran as the chief judge anymore, they were known among the people as kingsmen. Now, these people wanted to establish a king over the land. And they were, they were just, it's a horrible thing that they wanted this king to rule over the land. And they went around telling people, we need a king. We want to be like, sounds familiar, we want to have a king like everyone else. Do you know why that sounds familiar? If we go to the book of Judges in the Old Testament, God had people ruling as by judges. We see some Deborah, Samson, they were all what was called judges. These were God's chosen servants to lead over his people. So it's no surprise that the Nephites adopted the concept of judges, because they had the books. And it was the people who wanted to have a king, an earthly king. They didn't want to accept God as their king. They wanted an earthly king like all other nations. So they wanted someone to rule over them on earth. And they were warned that they're going to take your daughters, your men, they're going to tax you. And that's exactly what happened. We see this through the rest of the Old Testament on how when kings are righteous, that's fine. But when kings are not, it makes life miserable for everyone. So the kingsmen were desirous to overthrow the government and establish a king. Now, those who were desirous that Pahoran remained chief judge over all the land, they were known as freemen. Now, this was the division between the land. They were now known as freemen and kingsmen. Now, the freemen had sworn or made a covenant to maintain their rights and their privileges of their religion by a free government. So, this contention was settled by the voice of the people, and it was the freemen that had the most votes that Pahoran stays in his seat, and no changes are made to the government. Now, here's something that I find interesting. Those who were in favor of king were those of high birth, and they sought to be king. So what they were looking for is and this is going to sound familiar, they wanted one person to be king over all the land. And then all these high birth people would be lower kings over their individual lands. Does this sound familiar to you? It should. Because that's what happened in Alma chapter 51 with Amalickiah. He wanted to be king. And actually, let's go there because there's so much to uncover there. Because remember, those people who were supporting Amalickiah back in chapter 51, these were people who were the lower judges. Probably some people who were wealthier through their business. They may have wanted this as well. But overall, it was the high judges or the lower judges that wanted to support Amalickiah as king over the Nephite peoples. These are the same, probably the exact same people who had first supported Amalickiah into becoming king, and now they're trying again later. Not much later, it's like a year or two difference. And so they're trying this again. Now, this time is bad timing on their part. Why? Because Amalickiah is in verse 9, if we pay attention, Amalickiah is again stirring up the hearts of the people of the Lamanites to go after the Lamanite, or against the Nephites. And he was doing this because he had sworn or taken an oath to drink the blood of Nephi, or not Nephi, Moroni. And so he was stirring them up. He's continually doing his bad leadership. So he's getting them to go up. And this is not the best time, because he has, Captain Moroni has people, and Pahoran, I should say. Captain Moroni and Pahoran both have people who are wanting to replace him, wanting to incite basically a civil war, is what they're trying to do. Trying to change the law. And if they continue, they're going to cause a civil war. And the Lamanites are going to take advantage of it, and they're going to come in and say, okay, you guys can't be friends with each other. We're going to take care of you ourselves. Now, this time, remember last time when they tried to go against the Nephites? Amalickiah did not go with them. Okay, when they went against the city of Moroni and the city of Noah, Amalickiah did not go. But this time, verse 12 states that Amalickiah did himself come down. So he's leading the armies again this time. This time, the generals that wanted to spare their people from being killed won't have an option. They'll have to send them to their deaths against the Nephites. All right, so how do you think Moroni would handle this? I want to point out something here real quick. Verse 13, I want you guys to pay attention to this. This is a critical point. It says that when the men who were called the kingmen had heard that the Lamanites were going to attack, you know what they did? They decided they weren't going to go to battle. They were going to stay at their homes and refuse to bring up arms. Because they were wroth, they were angry with the chief judge Pahoran and with the freemen. They were being selfish. So, when Moroni saw that the Lamanites were getting ready to come, and the king's men refused to take up arms, well, he sent a petition to the king, or to the chief judge, requesting the power to compel those dissenters to either defend their country or die. Well, What do you think the chief judge did? He gave him permission. This was not a time to have dissenters running free in the country. With war coming on the hand with the Lamanites, it's not the time. So, Moroni came, or called his armies forth, went down and went against the king's men. And he did this to pull them down from their pride. In verse 17, we're seeing this. To pull down their pride and their nobility, and to level them with the earth, that they should take up arms and support the cause of liberty. So they did go against them, and they did lift, and they weren't willing to take their arms against the Lamanites, but they sure were willing to bring up arms against the freemen. It says here in verse, where is it? Here it is, verse 18. It says, and it came to pass that the armies of Captain Moroni did march forth against the kingmen, against them, and they did pull down their pride and their nobility, insomuch as they did lift their weapons of war against the men of Captain Moroni, and they were hewn down and leveled to the earth. So they weren't willing to support Moroni and the freemen and against the Lamanites, but sure enough, when it came time for them to go against the freemen, they had no problem pulling up weapons. They were willing to cause civil war. Now, some people would say that's not what a civil war is, but you know what? When you go against the government, yeah, that's not a good thing. So for me, I'm just using the term. If you don't agree, that's fine. But here in verse 19, Mormon records that 4,000 dissenters were hewn down. They were killed. And those of the leaders that were not slain in battle were taken and cast into prison, because at this time there was no time for them to have a trial. It was bad timing. We got the Lamanites coming. We don't have time to do a trial. And so they each one received the choice. Either you take up arms and fight the Lamanites in defense of the title of liberty, of freedom, or you'll die. We've seen this happen before in the Book of Mormon. And it's effective. Now, those who didn't choose to die, who said they would defend freedom, were compelled to hoist up the title of liberty upon their towers and in their cities, and to take up defense against their arms. Now, there's one word here. So in verse 21, it says, and thus Moroni put an end to those kingmen that were not any known by the appellation, I think is how it's pronounced. But that word is a little fancy. I don't think it would have been a word that Joseph Smith would have been able to think up himself, because I had no idea what it meant. And I have more education than him. Not by much, mind you. But the word actually means simply known by as name. That's all it is. It means name. So an easier way to translate it would be, and thus Moroni put an end to those kingmen that were not any known by the name of kingmen. So kingmen, people completely gone. There's no one that will take that name on them. So, and here we see that Mormon records that he put an end to the stubbornness and the pride of those people who professed the blood of nobility, but they were brought down to humble themselves like unto their brethren and to fight valiantly for their freedom and from their bondage. So when I read that, I was like, so does this mean that there was an old, I don't know if they do it anymore, in the military. I know it's surprising how much military knowledge I actually have. I'm surprised myself. But it used to be in the military, I don't know why, maybe some of you military gurus who know this stuff, you were given a choice here in the U.S. when you're being charged with a crime. You could either serve time in prison or join the military. That was the choice. If once you finished serving your time in the military, that crime would have been no more. Now, if you can verify this more than me, I would appreciate it. It's what I remember. I think my dad used to talk about. My dad was a big Navy man, 30 years. And so maybe all those talks he used to have with me that seemed to go in one ear and out the other ear, maybe some of them caught hold in the cobwebs in my upstairs. So I don't know, but I'd love to know more. So now that Captain Moroni had put down the contentions, the Lamanites, while they were doing that, the Lamanites had decided to attack the land of Moroni. And we're almost done here. Not much more. Well, maybe a lot more. I just got a notification on my phone that my phone is almost dead. It's at 20%. No worries. I think we'll be able to finish this in time. Now, the Lamanites decide they're going to attack the city of Moroni. And unfortunately, the city of Moroni couldn't handle it. And so the Nephites had taken Amalickiah, and the Lamanites had taken a hold of the city of Nephi, or the city of Moroni. Now, one thing that it points out here says, that those who fled out of the city of Moroni came into the city of Nephi. And also the people of the city of Lehi gathered themselves into in preparations to receive the Lamanites. Now, Amalickiah, it points here in 25. This is a confusing part that some people brush over. Amalickiah doesn't want to go against the city of Nephi. It says here that he would not suffer the Lamanites to go against the city of Nephi to battle, but kept them down by the seashore, leaving men in every city to maintain and defend it. Now, Mormon here accidentally put Nephi as one of the cities that Amalickiah and the Lamanites had taken hold of. We learn later in, where was it? I think it was like 59, 5, I think it was, where it talks about how the city of Nephi was actually a place of refuge for all the other cities that were attacked. So the cities that were attacked, scratch out city of Nephi, it was not. It was actually the city of Lehi, Moroni, Amner, Gid, and Mulek. All these cities were all along the seashore. Nephi was further inland, so they didn't go up against it. And the Lamanites obtained by the cunning of Amalickiah so many cities that by their numberless hosts, all of which were strongly fortified, and so Captain Moroni, or I should say Teancum, who had slain Moroni, he was heading his people into face Amalickiah. Well, they camped in the land of Bountiful, and Amalickiah, who was marching, attacking all these places, decided to camp on the other side of the border. Well, Amalickiah, or Teancum, decided this was a time. He took several of his men. It says here that Teancum and his servants stole forth. In other words, they went into by night and went to the camp of Amalickiah, and everyone was asleep because they were exhausted. And so Teancum by himself went into the town, or into the tents, found where the king was, and killed Amalickiah, stabbed him in his sleep. Then he did immediately scrambled away because he didn't want to wake the king's servants and everyone else that was sleeping. So he returned to his own camp and told his men what had happened, and told his men to get ready for if the Lamanites awake and they see their king dead, they're gonna come after them. So all this and ended in the 25th year of the reign of Judges over the people of Nephi. And finally, Amalickiah, who had caused so much war and death, was finally dead. And thus ends chapter 51. Thank you for joining me. I hope you guys have a wonderful evening. Remember, I love you guys and I do pray for you. And I hope that you guys have a wonderful evening and have a great day tomorrow. I love you guys, and we'll see you tomorrow for another scripture of the day.